Welcome. This is the next in our How to Handicap series where we get a expert handicapper and break down concepts for specific parts of the season. This week we're going to be talking, Marco, about early season college basketball. Now that college basketball is heating up, there's a ton of opportunity out there, I think, financially. The lines are softer now than ever. Now, you're really one of the few guys that you win seemingly at every sport in the long term. So college is one of your favorites, basketball. Let's just go through a checklist of, if I'm a new to handicapping, what am I looking at as a college basketball guy what should I be looking at?
Well, the first thing that everybody should look at when you start a college basketball season is look at the returning starters, like you should in any sport. In college basketball, a team that's bringing back the nucleus of their team from last year, if you got 4 starters returning, that team's going to have more chemistry and more continuity early in the season. So you want to identify those type of teams.
All right, so the turnover in college basketball is significantly greater than in college football.
Absolutely.
With the elite program. So in a way, it sounds like we should split up the two types. With the Kansas, the Kentuckys, they got almost 5 pro guys that are freshmen. A lot of them are jumping. How do you look at those teams?
Well, definitely you're going to have the turnover much more, but on the same token, they're going to be restocking a lot with better blue chippers than the other teams.
So do you actually go in and assess how good the recruits are?
What you're going to look at is, there are services that you can use, scouting services that rank some of these people, but look at how the first couple games go. And I think, we're into the season. I don't jump in and make plays like the first night. I'll watch a game or two before I actually play.
So now a lot of guys, the guys that do a lot of preseason prep and think they can predict how good these teams are going to be, Zach Lawson's one of our guys that does a great job at that. He's had a great start to the season. But you're saying you're more based on performance and you need a few games under your belt.
Absolutely. Now, but I want to elaborate on one point that you did make about, the teams in the turnover and then other teams don't. A perfect example of that is your mid-majors. They have a tendency more to keep teams for that full 4 years, keep them in school, and then whenever they get to, I think of a team like a Butler, a couple years ago, Cleveland State, those teams have been together for 4 years. By the time they get to that 4th year, it's almost like having an NBA team almost for that team because they know each other so well. It's a well-oiled machine.
Okay, so these teams that restock, the very best teams that have a lot of guys leaving early for the NBA, they seem to be a team that's going to get a lot better as the season goes on, where the trend, college basketball is a fairly long season, the trend line of the teams is important. And so would you agree that the improvement line of the teams with a lot of new players is going to be steeper? So you might want to fade them early, and when they're overvalued because all the blue chippers, hey, this guy was number 5 in the country or whatever coming out of high school, but then look to play on them as they start to come together as a team.
The biggest mistake that a lot of people make early in the season is they see somebody play once or twice and then they form an opinion and they don't change from that. You have to be able to adjust as the season goes, and generally Vegas is a little bit slow on the draw to, adjusting after a poor start. So you can get value, and that's a great point, RJ.
All right, go ahead.
The other things that you got to look at in early season, when you're looking at the logs, and when I talk logs, that's the schedule and what the teams have done. You're running them down, their scores so far. You got to be a parent and look at the teams that play a lot of these November and December tournaments. You get a lot of these during this time of the year, the holiday tournaments. They travel for 2 reasons. One, you can have some despairing results when you might look at somebody and say, oh, they played horrible. Well, they might have been in Hawaii, and the team was there having a good time rather than taking it serious. So don't put too much stock on a bad performance. But what you need to do is these teams that go deep in those tournaments and they make it to the championship game, that's something to note for when you get later in the season, when you get to March Madness, because these teams have already had a little taste of a tournament atmosphere playing on a back-to-back night. It's a great
Okay,
learning.
so you're saying that these tournaments tend towards extreme results because of motivation factors, maybe back-to-back-to-back. I mean, sometimes they'll play 3 straight games. So you're saying look at those with a grain of salt. But later in the year, if they've had that experience, it's a positive for postseason.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Another thing to look at in early season, and this is a big one, and I think you can find a lot of value in games, is you've heard me talk so many times, my handicap comes from what happened in the last game, and then how's that going to affect the next game. And I think you get
So
line
much
value.
often with public perception.
Public perception. You'll see a team, a big name school they just barely get by a team. So automatically your knee-jerk reaction is, oh, that team's not as good as we thought they were. But a lot of times what this is, and you get this more in college basketball than any other sport, you got these big brother versus little brother games that I like to talk about. There was a game earlier this year, it was a perfect example of that. Duquesne, which happens to be in Pittsburgh, my backyard, played a team, Robert Morris. Well, first of all, half the country probably doesn't even know Duquesne's in Pittsburgh, let alone know that Robert Morris is also in Pittsburgh, and it's a smaller school. And what you get with these little schools like it, these are the players that maybe wanted to go to Pitt or go to Duquesne and were said, you're not good enough.
Or their friends from high school or whatever.
The little brother's always going to be more up for a game. And when you get them on your gym, because a lot of times it's courtesy, they'll do the home and home. These small schools have Cracker Jack gyms, a lot of them, and the crowd becomes so much more effective. Not because it's a big crowd, because it's a small crowd right on top of you. And when you see a team play a game like that, don't overreact to a bad score.
So it sounds like there's two opportunities here. You play the dog because you understand this. You play Robert Morris in that example. And then you play on the team that seemed to have the better performance, Duquesne in this case, next because people are going to overreact.
Which that happened to be my first college basketball play this year. Duquesne ended up rolling in that next game after the Robert Morris game, and I thought there was great line value.
Good point. Go on.
Those are my key points for a handicapping early college basketball. Remember, don't get locked into one opinion once you see a team play. Be open to adjustments. Look at the teams and watch them throughout the season, because what you see at the beginning, these are works in progress, especially with the teams that you see that are only returning maybe 2 starters. Those teams will get better as the season goes on, especially the blue chip programs.
Okay, so I would say this. I would say we probably have as many, if not more, experts in college basketball than any sport. I just think that the type of handicapper we attract at pregame.com, I think, is the type that's a grinder. And to be candid, guys like Mike Cook, guys like Zach Lawson, these guys are grinders. And so there's a lot of opportunity. And what we do early in the season is we offer season subscriptions. And what we don't do is keep them available all season. We're like, listen, you've got a week, you got 2 weeks to jump on and save big money. It ends up being you're paying like a couple bucks a day for these winning picks if you buy throughout this for the season. Right now and in any year, early in the year, we have those offers. And all you got to do is go to pregamepros.com, and I'll look out at the camera here. Go to pregamepros.com, and you can check out all the deals on the individual pros pages. And go into pregameforums.com, and if we have any special discounts in addition to the early season, they're going to be available there. Okay, Marco, good stuff. All right, this is, like I said, our continuing series when it comes to how to handicap. We'll be back with more of videos just like this. And remember, you can get all of our videos at pregame.tv.